This is incredible. This is the best plugin for OBS that exists, period. This is amazing. Hello. Hello. Wait, are we cooking? We're cooking. I am freaking stoked. All right. So today we are continuing the Stream Pro raid train. And if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, raid-train.com. We have a whole bunch of the best of stream educators here. A bunch of us, the best of the best stream educators are just kind of doing back-to-back streams today. So we've already had Mr. Greggles and Andy. I don't remember who else has gone. Gale is going right now before me. So he will be raiding into me, and then after my stream, we will be raiding into Crash. Thank you so much. We are off to a great start here. Someone's asking about my chat overlay. This is actually my own commissioned stream overlay from Nerd or Die. It is EposVox.gg/nerd or die. You can use EposVox to save 10%. The specific layout is called StreamOS. You will notice a very familiar face and familiar older setup in the trailer for it. All right, so today we are going to go to the analog realm. I'm going to show you my way for doing it with real hardware, and then we are also going to walk through tons of cool effects and plugins and stuff that we can do it in software, because you can do it both ways, and frankly, doing it in hardware, especially if you do it with the like attention to quality that I do with a lot of things, honestly doesn't always look as convincing. It depends on what you're interested in. Now back here behind this stuff, this is a dope tube headphone amp I haven't really gotten use out of yet. I have my stack of VCRs. So I've got a VHS DVD combo, and this is S-Video VHS. I've got a high 8 deck, and then I've got this Panasonic DVD burner, which just acts as a time-based corrector, which I have a whole glitch art course coming on the art channel where I will explain a lot of this stuff. But I keep this at my desk because I do like actual VHS archiving, ripping, that kind of stuff. If you've seen No Clips Project, where they've archived a bunch of game trailers and E3 conferences and stuff, like that is the stuff I am addicted to. So I'm trying to do it in the best quality possible, on top of the fact that I love shooting on like high 8 tapes and whatever. And so I want to be able to easily rip it to use in my videos. You don't need all of this. The basics for what you're going to need today, I have a Google Doc ready that I will share with you. It is literally like 4 things, so don't stress too much, but I'm going to link it in the chat here. You only need really a couple things. I have a CRT set up so we can demonstrate the effects. You don't even need one to do these effects if you don't want to just look at it on an authentic display here. This one is a CRT in Spanish for some reason. But you will need a couple things. You will need a way to get your digital signal into the analog realm. So what I typically use is this guy right here. This is the Blackmagic Intensity Shuttle. This was my first 1080p 60 capable capture card. I've had this since like 2010-ish, I want to say. It has component, composite, and S-Video, as well as HDMI input and output. And it connects through USB 3. This was a nightmare back in the early days because I was using old AMD hardware. And the USB drivers back on older AMD hardware were an absolute nightmare. These days, they're a lot better. But these days, it's a good, when you can find it for like $100 or less, a good option that you can use what's called the DeckLink driver from Blackmagic to get your video out of OBS. OBS actually ships with uses the DeckLink driver when you install Blackmagic's drivers. So I'm going to show you what I have set up here. So over here, I have a portable version of OBS run, and then I have virtual cammed my primary webcam view here out to this second version of OBS. This OBS is set up to run at 640 by 480 at 60 FPS because that is standard def. And you will need to set it to 480 for the DeckLink to output analog properly. So 5994 frames per second, 640 by 480. So we're set up with the standard 480p view, and I've just cropped in on my camera here. But then, once you've installed the Blackmagic drivers, Tools, Decklink Output, I'm able to choose the device and send it over standard definition out the composite output of the capture card. And so that gives me an analog video feed just directly over composite. You could do S-Video, you could do component, you can do whatever, but if we're going for quality degradation, you're going to not want the best quality capture. So we have a composite video source going straight to the CRT in all of its destroyed glory. Now, for those of us in Europe, would you have to use PAL settings? Yes. So you'd want 576 or whatever, probably. The driver will let you choose here. If I pull up actually desktop, if I pull up the driver software here, I can choose the formats for the different outputs. And I can kind of like customize that. And so PAL is supported. So you just set that up in the driver and you'd be fine in PAL regions. So you will be covered if you're over there in Europe land. You're good to go. It won't be a problem. So then that gives you an analog video feed output. If you don't want to mess with this, I will say this is my favorite way using any of the Blackmagic cards. Blackmagic Intensity Pro, Intensity Shuttle, even some of the newer stuff. You will have a really good time playing with this Decklink Output driver to do all sorts of stuff. It works magic in Touch Designer if you want to get into generative graphics. There's a few other softwares like that. It is a fun driver to play with that you don't have to worry about using up your display limitations in your normal graphics card driver or whatever. If you don't want to mess with that, then what you can do is you can just get a pretty standard HDMI to RCA adapter, and this will be low quality, but again, we're not after the highest quality at the moment. You can get one of these bad boys and just really cheaply over USB power convert an HDMI port from your graphics card over to composite, and then you just like projector preview or whatever from OBS to it. You could send game consoles this way, Blu-ray players, whatever. This is the cheaper way to go for sure. It's like $10. Quality will not be great. The control you have will not be great. But if you're looking for the cheap, easy way to do it, I highly recommend it. Another good option, if you already have a Mister, is MrCast. I really need to play with MrCast. So that's step one, is getting your video out through analog. Step two would then be capturing it back. So you could either run it to a VCR and like burn it to a VHS tape and capture it back, but then you can't get real-time effects. The other way is to just loop it back through another capture option. Now, theoretically, you could just go end to end in this intensity card and probably capture the same feedback. I like doing it separate because that can cause some kind of funky issues. So again, you can get one of those cheapo RCA to HDMI cables, and you'll need a couple RCA cables to go with it, but it looks identical. It just goes the other direction. So composite back in, HDMI back out to a capture card and capture it. Now again, you can run it through different VCRs. You can run it through different analog processing gear. I have my whole glitch art set up for that again, I cover on the art channel, which is called Analog Dreams, if you want to check that out. But that is the basic setup. Now, I'm extra, and I live in this land, so I'm using a device called the RetroTink 4K to upscale my video. And this is how I get like the best quality analog rips. And so I've just turned it on with the remote here, and we will switch to the scene for it. I got to switch inputs and all of that. We've now upscaled it back to 4K in 60 FPS. Now, I'm only running at 30, but you get the idea. And so we get some of that lower quality crunch, but we've now scaled it back up. And this can be a lot of fun if you are running through more damaged gear or you want certain profiles. And in the RetroTink, we can do all sorts of effects and things like that. Like here, I have some like masking we can do. There we go. I have like a CRT mask, which is not going to compress super well, but you can play with it to kind of emulate being on a CRT. There's a lot we can do there. Now, another option, if you don't want the whole convolution of going back out from OBS into the analog, back from the analog into OBS and all of that, is you can just... I just knocked a lot of stuff down. You can just get yourself an analog camcorder. There are tons of handy cams available on eBay. Super, super, super cheap. And they're all going to have live view, S-Video, and RCA out. So this is a baller cinema camera that records high 8 because I'm currently experimenting with this and I'm stupid extra. But this has the same idea in that I'm just going to run composite out here. into my setup, and we'll just swap cables. And now I've got this crazy analog setup where I can like show you around my studio. With 1,000,000 times optical zoom. And have like a truly authentic analog webcam experience. Hi. Like this is legit as it gets. And we can even do feedback loops. Pointing it at the display. It's gonna get kind of funky. But you get the idea. So you could just spend... Please stay. You could just spend like $40 on a handycam and just cheaply convert it up to HDMI. And you've got that go. I have a YouTube short and TikTok about doing this as well. So those are some options available to you. I'll switch my cables back here. What about overheating? These things do not overheat. That's a Sony mirrorless problem. That's not a standard def problem. I watch too many horror movies. Yeah! We get some Salem... no, what was it? You know what I'm talking about. Brain. That movie. Blair Witch. My brain shutting down. Anyway. So that's how you can do it with the physical realm. And like I said, there's a whole world of like analog processing and glitch effects that you can do. That I actually have a glitch art course free, tutorial series coming on the art channel that I plan on releasing soon. I've been scripting it for like 2 years. I'm finally getting around to it. But that's it. It's pretty simple. It is a lot of fun. And you can get some cool effects by just like pointing your camera at the screen and shooting it that way as like your source. Like Shindigs has definitely highlighted a couple channels that have set up their entire stream overlay by just having a stack of CRTs, which is something really cool. You got to really fine tune your camera settings to make that happen. But that's the general idea. And you get some really cool authentic effects. Like if I zoom in real quick here. Whoa. Like that's pretty cool. Do 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 do. I don't know what I'm doing. You get the idea. There is a lot of realm that you can conquer. Yeah, DIY recursion without needing the Exceldro plugin. Lots of cool stuff you can do there. And that's the lo-fi way of introducing more analog stuff into your setup. You can keep it 4:3 like I did here. You can crop in on it and just accept like the wider field of view. Make sure you're scaling with area so you get the sharpest pixels. That kind of stuff. There is a lot you can unlock when you're willing to use older gear. Also, if you're not streaming, if you're just... I'll switch back so we're not out of sync, but if you're just making videos, look on eBay, pick up some old digicams, like, old digicams that shoot a little bit of video, or like a flip video camera. Get you some native 4:3 old school videos recorded. Dirtying up your video, whether it's analog or not, it doesn't need to, those are digital, not analog, but whether it's an old school look or just a more creative look, I definitely recommend finding some ways to be a little more creative than just aiming for the cleanest and the nicest possible looks, because people get bored of that so easily. Party Epos emote win. Yes. So another way you can start bringing some of this old school vibes into your stream is obviously through software effects. As an example, I have here this lovely MySpace Space Hey style layout, which automatically just kind of invokes some of those vibes. This is a blend of a real Space Hay layout created in CSS and HTML, and then photoshopped kind of things to fit them around and make them fit bigger. And then the little scrolly cat and the GIFs are all added in OBS. And so you can get a lot of fun with that kind of stuff. And I love this. Like, this just feels like the dream layout. My goal with this kind of layout is to get where it has the latest blog posts right there. To have that be my activity feed and just automatically update with the same font and everything. Tired of Discord, return to Skype. Yes. And then like contacting EposVox, instead of just having add to friends and whatever, just have it be like my socials or something like that. And then at some point I'd probably replace the Space Hay logo and branding with just a play on MySpace and Space Hay that isn't actually real, just to be brand safe or whatever. But we got the blinkies, we got the scrolling mouse cursor, we got some scan lines going, and we got a live chat that looks close enough to the rest of the layout. That is not too difficult to do, especially if you just go through Space Hay and get like pre-made layouts, zoom in really, really big in your web browser, and then screenshot into Photoshop and crop out however you want, replace some of the text. Like, this kind of thing is easy. But what if you want your sources to look a little bit more degraded? Well, that we can do. So I am going to pull this view up. So this is going to have our webcam so you can see what we can do with it. And then we can turn on, some old analog vibes with some filters. And we're also going to take a look at the retro effects plugin from Finite Singularity, because that dude has made my dream video effects. So it's in the Google Doc if you are unaware of it. Finite Singularity, new plugin dev on the horizon for OBS, has been making some wonderful stuff. And in that is a new beta plugin called Retro Effects, where I've gotten to work with them to suggest a bunch of different effects that I wanted to see, both for real life streaming, but also my videos, and for, I think a lot of it would be really neat for VTubing. And so you can download that off GitHub. It is still in beta, but we are going to add a filter to our webcam source here. And yes, Finite Singularity is who we owe this entire raid train to. Not giving enough credit here. Absolutely. Organized this whole thing. Amazing dude. We're going to add a new filter, Retro Effects. And this has a few different effects all built in here. So if you want multiples, you will have to just keep stacking the effect. But my favorite, of course, chromatic aberration, which is just RGB separation. So you can either do it with like distortion here, or if you go into manual, we can, like, for example, set up the blue a little bit and then get the angle going for it. And we can get that old school kind of trippy vibe going on. So we can do that. We've got frame skipping, which is to simulate lower frame rates, which could be used for a lot of things. And so you just got like a slider of how many frames to skip. But that could be used to simulate poor decode, lower performance. If I wanted to just showcase on stream what like 120 FPS versus 60 FPS versus 30 FPS looked like for the same content. Or it can be combined with some other stuff for some cool effects. My biggest request for this plugin was the interlacing simulator, which allows you to simulate combing artifacts from not properly deinterlacing your video. So as I move around, when you're in 4K video, you got to make them like super chunky, but like simulate the combing artifacts from not properly deinterlacing video, which obviously only shows in motion, just like it would in proper like interlaced video. So if you really want to get that going, I'm just realizing I do have it. Okay, there's a way we're going to use this that's going to look amazing. And I definitely think that's going to be really cool for what I plan to do for VTubing. There's a typical posterize effect, which is nice. Got different levels for that. You can also gradient map colors. So, we could do the usual cool effects you could do with there. You can start making some glitch art just by combining these effects. You've got dithering that you can do. Start making it look like a FMV movie. Does start to get kind of gritty looking, like a grid, not gritty. But you do have options for that. There is a CRT emulator, which this one is really cool. So you got a bunch of different, like, basically like on the RetroTink, you have a bunch of different CRT masks you can kind of simulate here. So we've got like just glowy, we've got start to get scan lines going, kind of slot mask looking one here with the vertical lines. Like there is a bunch of different options you can kind of simulate here that look really nice. A lot better than the shaders I've seen. And then you've got intensity for them. So you can kind of control how it impacts your feed. I'll crank that up so I can see to get the one I wanted, which was that one. Dial that back down. And obviously it's not going to compress super well. And then of course you get bloom for it, which is amazing. I always love a good bloom shader. Threshold for what actually blooms out, which is nice. So I can add a little glow to it. And then you actually have geometry control to round off your CRT and barrel distortion. Color correction tools, so you can really fine tune this. Like this is hardcore. You don't get a lot of this kind of stuff in a lot of stuff. But then we could make a new scene real quick here. So hold on. Like you could properly emulate a CRT. So I am going to build, I know this is blank, bear with me. I'm going to build a stream pack with VHS related stuff to give out at some point. So be on the lookout for that. Like actually embed it in like CRT graphics and stuff. And this could be useful not just for your camera, not for just special effects, but for making your retro game streams look a lot like they actually looked when you're playing them or something. So we can, probably zoom in on that a little bit. But yeah, now I'm talking to you from a CRT and from a CRT. Right? And then we could go further with this by adding on. So if I go back here, like there are scanline shaders. So if I go to user-defined shader, from file, scanline. I don't know why it defaults to diagonal, but we just 90. Like, boom. And you can customize them more from there, but where's my new scene? Where's my new scene I just made? Right? Right? Like, we're getting there. I'm sure it's not compressing super well. Y'all can see it on the 4K VOD a little bit easier. But, like, had a question from Cujo. Dumb question from a dumb mod. Would it use less processing power to use these plugins versus placing a second camera at the CRT behind you? Yeah, just capturing it would absolutely use less processing power. But there's a lot more involved in that, obviously. So we can do that. We can continue this. So if I turn off that shader, there are more effects. So we've got... Oh, this is the side-by-side. So there are more. There's an NTSC emulator. This one is crazy, okay? So this one aims to emulate like an actual NTSC broadcast signal. So right now it's just set to like neutral. There's kind of an effect, I think. If I turn it off, yeah. Like there's already like some color separation. You can definitely see it in my shirt. But then if we start changing the tuning, it starts tweaking the actual like signal strength to the extent that we can just totally like lose our signal. And what's amazing is it generates the snow the further you get away from it. I don't know how he did this. This feels like magic. I have wanted a TV snow generator for streams for a very long time. So this is incredible. So you can just apply like a little bit of it there. I'm going to do like 10. 8, not 80, just 8. But then you can tweak the settings from there. So we can add a whole bunch of noise. It just seems to be a snow generator, which isn't going to be great for Twitch, but I love. You've got the bands, and this is where it starts to get into glitch art territory with the modulation stuff. Like, I am so happy right now that I can do this in a plugin in OBS, that I have physical gear to do. We can change the number of bands so we can really start making it look like a tape. And then we got color bleed. So I definitely want a lot of that. We've got picture adjustment, so we can change brightness and saturation just like you would on a tube box. Now we're getting some magic going. Like, I am so happy. This is incredible. This is the best plugin for OBS that exists, period. This is amazing. So someone in the chat just asked a minute ago, you can combine this with the move plugin to move it dynamically too. So I don't think I have it installed, but there is one effect in this that will work with the move plugin for like transitions. That's going to be amazing, that I will get to in just a minute. But someone in chat asked if you can emulate the tape wrinkle. Currently, no. I am putting this out there publicly, putting him on the spot for finite singularity. I want that for this plugin. So the tape wrinkle is when like a whole bar moves up and down the screen. Well, mostly just down, as if you actually had a wrinkle in your tape. It's part of the, it's in the Red Giant Universe VHS emulation plugin, but absolutely, that is one of my favorite effects. Especially if you just do it real slow, just like with a real low frequency, and especially if it's like slightly randomized, just like every once in a while a little line moves down, like S tier. We're not done with this plugin yet. Pull filters back up yet. Pull filters back up. There is the cathode boop. Boop, boop. We got to rename it. Cathode boop. Cathode boot. This is turning the TV off and on. He's got vertical collapse. I have a TV on the top of my CRT wall that permanently looks like this because it's suffering from vertical collapse. He's got this as a whole effect. As a CRT enthusiast, I have never been more like watch. Same thing. Come back. There we go. It doesn't do it. That one doesn't do it turning it back on. So that one you combine with the move plugin, and if you get like embarrassed in a game or you just want to do a dramatic exit or something, you could set up with the move plugin to hit one button and just boop you off the screen at a certain speed. Like, that would be freaking sick. And you do have full control over this. So, like, you've got thickness of the white line. I'm not sure what horizontal thickness does, honestly. No, I guess there's a stroke there as well. You got glow, so I definitely want that maxed out. Yes, that is freaking. You could simulate in real time that HBO intro before Game of Thrones. Where it's like, and it has the HBO text, and then you've got full. I'm realizing you're not seeing it in the full view on the left, but you see it in the effect here. You've got full timing here, and like where it ends, all of that stuff, you got full control. So combine that with the Move plugin, and you'd absolutely be able to do some crazy stuff here. I don't think I have Move. I do have Move. Let me put it this way. I don't know how to use Move right now. They changed it. He changed it a while back, and I never got the hang of it again. At some point, I'll get it set back up. But then, like, you put the scan lines first. Like, any effects that you don't want to affect this, you put the cathode boop on the boot. Cathode boop. That's just what it is now. Put it at the end, and then it's combined in there. It's incredible. And then, of course, as a final one, there is the Matrix Rain effect, where it puts you into the Matrix. And you can do custom character textures. You can make your own, which I think is going to be really powerful. You've got a couple different built-in options. You can do emojis, or just the default Matrix Rain. You can, like, zoom it in, make it real lo-fi, although you can't really see yourself at that point. Or, like, really small, so you can really see through the Matrix. Noise shift, that's fascinating. You can colorize it, which actually looks pretty cool. Change the text color and the background color. Like, that is beautiful. And you got full controls over that as well. So, if we were to build up my, okay, 100% my favorite OBS plugin that has ever been made in my entire life. For those who missed it, this is the beta retro effects plugin from the genius mind over at Finite Singularity. Working on allowing the user to change the RGB value of the black background so it could be transparent pixels. That would be incredible. Exceldro gave a move introduction in his stream. I will definitely have to watch it. But I want to show you what the ultimate form of this can look like, okay? I want to build with you what I think is the ultimate retro webcam. So I'm going to delete all of these. We are going to start from absolute scratch. So the first step I'm going to do is scale down my video using area for sharpest pixels to 640 by 480. And that is going to stretch the aspect ratio to square. But that's fine because we will stretch it back out. I am going to go ahead and slap on that stretch back out at the end so that we can continue to see the results side by side here. So back to 4K. We're going to use area, and I'm just going to set it up here to 4K. So I'm going to rename this one to 480p. So in between these two scales, you notice there might be some like a little bit of pixelation, but it doesn't look very different right now because all we did was just shrink it down and back up. But in between these two, we can start adding some effects. So the first effect I want to do is with retro effects. I want to interlace my video, but I'm interlacing it at 480. So we are now going to make it 480i. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner. So now we have 480i video scaled back up to 4K, not de-interlaced. So then from there, we are once again going to add retro effects. I'm going to boop this back up, and we are going to add the NTSC filter. Now, this is looking a lot more drastic than it did before. If I turn off all the scaling, this is what the NTSC filter looks normally. We already demoed it. But if you scale your video down to 480 before you apply the effect, it's way more drastic and realistic. So that is my hot tip number one. Scale your video down before applying the retro effects, because you get a whole lot more. Now, I would love, as a feature request to Finite, if it's possible and wouldn't add too much overhead or whatever, for there to just be an option in every single one of these filters to pre-scale to 480 and then scale back up just built into the filter, so I don't have to stack it this way, but I still want the ability to stack it if I want, so I can combine filters. Just as a note. Maybe it's not worth it because I can stack it. But you can see here the difference in scaling, pre-scaling versus not is drastic. So now we can start playing with the tuning. Again, we're going to be subtle with the NTSC one. We're going to add some noise, but we're going to be kind of subtle with it. Maybe we'll make smaller bands, but we'll add more of them. They start to kind of phase out after a certain point. Oh, that was only 2? Lol. You can see the noise relationship starts to change a little bit. That's a little too noisy. I'm going to turn noise back down. So that's looking good. We'll add bleed. A little bit there. Crank up saturation a bit. There we go. So yeah, the tape wrinkle and the tracking effects are high on my request list with Finite. They are not available just yet. So that's looking pretty good on its own. Now we add in the scan lines. So user-defined shader. There's a bunch of shaders already built into the user-defined shader plugin from Exceldro, which is just his port of it. But he also did build a VCR shader, VHS shader for me, if you wanted to emulate that. So we could play with that. Now, it gets super funky, like super quickly, so you've got to be very gentle with it. But that can start to emulate some of the tracking stuff in the meantime. I think I'm going to like how Finite implements this stuff better than the plugin, but we can get some of that going. Like I said, it is very aggressive. Maybe if we turn down the alpha, that's not doing anything at all. But just like a little bit. And I think we put that before the other effects. Well, after interlacing, but before that. And so this is not scan lines. This is VCR. And then after retro effects, again, user defined shader. This one will be scan lines. And actually, I'm gonna mute that one. There's a VCR and a VHS one in the user defined shader. So that was VHS. VCR. Okay, so this is the VCR shader, which gets some of that frame jitter kind of stuff. But like I said, these are all mega aggressive up front. Yeah, I can't get rid of the line. I don't like it. So we're going to stick with that one to get the little scroll. And then again, we'll get that scan lines. I do like the scan line filter. And they have some RGB splits and things like that. So again, we want to change the angle to 90 degrees. I don't know why it defaults to 45. We want to animate them. We want to slow that down a lot. And they are super big right now. So now we need to change the size of them, which I believe is period. There we go. That's a little bit more how we want. We could also add this after the scale up, but this is fine. So floor changes like the opacity. So we just want a little bit of subtleness there, but enough to show up on Twitch. And now, again, the wrinkle effect here with the shader. What's the 480p filter called again? That is just the scaling aspect ratio filter built into OBS. You don't need a plugin for it. Scaling, oh, you can't really see that. Scoot. Scaling aspect ratio. You can scale to whatever resolution you want here. So we've got interlacing to fit within the scan lines, which is ironically a little masked by the scan lines, but that's like part of the effect, right? So scale to 480, interlace, that VCR wrinkle, which I'm going to turn off. I'm not a huge fan of it right now. The NTSC, and then a little bit of scan lines over top, which I would still like to hide a little bit better. But if you don't want that scan line shader, or shaders are too hard to run for you, you can do another retro effects. And this is the CRT emulation one. And we can do CRT. And then we have the different layouts. And again, at 480p, this looks really crazy. I love it. Turn down the intensity. I want that one. Bloom size on here, you're going to want to lower this because it's starting to get really overexposed. Now that's looking like a real CRT. So this is the side-by-side. The 4K camera zoomed in a little bit versus the effects. Already looking pretty wild. From there, then we can start doing stuff like putting it in a CRT frame, which again, I will pack up a whole CRT VHS kind of rescue. I just read that in the chat. Graphics pack and stuff soon on the shop, so keep an eye out for that. But we can add in some other elements. So I've packaged up some like bad tracking overlays and noise patterns and stuff. Blending mode screen. And then if we add a filter for opacity and just turn it down a bit. Crap, there is sound in there. I am so sorry. I knew that and then forgot. This would be sick with the starting soon screen with a different camera angle. Yes, exactly. And then, of course, you can add text in here if you want. So we can add... This is not the correct font. I apparently don't have the VCR font on here, but we can get that kind of action going. And then get some, like, timecode stuff, maybe. Goofy little text elements like that. Or I have some overlays... If I go back into my, I don't know how well these will play in OBS. That kind of stuff. It's not transparent. I'm just using the blending modes in OBS. You don't need transparency. Transparency is very hard to decode in OBS. So it's better to just do stuff with like a black background and then use screen or something like that. So that's the gist of the Retro Effects plugin and the others that like you could use for this. They're pretty crazy. Like I said, my big recommendation is to Scale down before you apply these kinds of effects. Theoretically, it should make it easier on your GPU to apply the effects, because assuming the chain is correct, you're running the effects at a lower resolution, so it should be lighter. But I don't know if it actually works that way in OBS. But that's the flow to like really get it crazy. Like, you don't even need the CRT one. Changes it a lot. Like, it's authentic. It definitely looks like it looks over here. But like, if you want to see more of the details of the effect, I definitely like this one as well. Especially combined with the other overlays. Like, that's pretty neat. I would still want some sort of scan line on here. And I have those kinds of stuff too. Like, I could do blending mode, screen. I've got a little bit of analog snow, as well as, oh, there's no overlay blending mode, so I can't use that scan line. I don't know why OBS doesn't have the overlay blending mode. It's really annoying. But I do have this from my VHS texture pack I released on my shop. And just crank down the opacity a bit. Static scan lines, which is fine. Yes, it will make it less GPU intensive significantly. Well, then, yeah, 100%. Not only do the effects look better, but it will perform better. How do we install this to our OBS? I have been linking it in chat. You just copy the files or run the installer, like any other plugin. Yeah, so since people are asking, again, the chain of filters here is, first, I scale down my webcam. I nested it. So I have my normal webcam nest and then the effects one, so that I'm not affecting my webcam everywhere. I scaled it down to 640 by 480, or I could do 720 by 480. Either one is fine, which is stretching the aspect ratio, but that's fine. I'm using area, so we have the sharpest like scale. And then start applying the effects. So we've got the retro effects interlace and the retro effects NTSC. And this provides a better look. And then at the end of that, I applied the scaling aspect ratio filter again to scale it back up to 4K, which is what it was at. So that everything is put back in its place. Because otherwise, sizing it up on stream is going to be kind of annoying. Finite also has a noise generating filter and a blur filter that are both really great now. And of course, you can combine it with some of the other fun effects from the past couple years, like the recursion effect from Accelerate, but you need alpha for that, like green screen or whatever, to really work. You can do some cool stuff with the noise displacement map. That is trippy as hell. Yeah, seeing all these effects, I am very excited to see what Finite does with like actual glitch arty kind of stuff. With the proper settings, I bet you could use noise displace to get a good VCR wave effect. That's what I was thinking. That is exactly what I was thinking. All right, reset, nope. Transform, fit to screen. So like I can send my entire scene. I could send my desktop capture. So if I did, or I could do like the side-by-side. Like you could send anything here and then capture it with a camera. So you could run it that way. I had no idea plugins got so much power in them you can overlay them like that. Yeah, absolutely. It is crazy. Finite did a ton of signal processing in school with GPU compute stuff. You were like the perfect person to do this then. But yeah, everyone's been showing off crazy stuff in the train. So yeah, you could put, I mean, I could pull up like a browser source and output it to the camera. So if I did browser source, new browser source, hello keyboard. My keyboard is dead. So now I can just send just that. Well. Just like that one scene over to the TV, anything like that. Really freaking cool. Dude, Finite, that is some of the best looking retro effects, like filters, shaders, plugins, whatever, I have seen in anything I have used. I typically do not like how they look. And your filters absolutely look like the most accurate and the most authentic. Like I have always been a person that specifically avoids, I mean, that's why I introduced doing it the real way first. because I avoid most of the plugins or whatever to do these kinds of things because I don't think they look very good. And these look like the most authentic. I pay a lot of money for my Red Giant analog plugins that I use for DaVinci Resolve just because they're like the only option available, and I've really struggled to recreate them fully myself. And, you know, with the built-in effects. This beats those by a lot. So you're telling me I should be charging 100%. I would pay you if you could somehow translate this into a DaVinci Resolve plugin. I think they use Python. All right, so I guess the next demo I want to do is showing how this would look, I guess, on like building an example retro game stream. Why 5994 FPS on one OBS, but 60 on the other? So this one, the one you're seeing, is going to Twitch. Twitch and the Twitch enhanced broadcasting beta, which I'm using and stuff like that, work better with the flat 60. This other OBS is going to analog hardware, which runs at 59.94 hertz, and I have to have it set to that to get it on the analog TV. I typically run at the fractional frame rates for everything just to keep things consistent, but for the Twitch enhanced broadcasting beta, flat 60 seems to work better. All right, so we are going to take this screenshot of Super Metroid, and we are going to muck it up. So that is where we can use this one now. But instead of my webcam, we add the CRT scene. Okay, so this is a cool thing. This is an important note. I do want to talk about this for a moment. If you are capturing your retro games in native 480i or 480p and deinterlacing, then you can still scale up losslessly in post using area scaling. So I just resized this whole picture and then was going to downscale again. We don't need to do that. It's already a roughly 480p screenshot from the original game. It is a 240p game, but screenshotting older hardware like that wasn't super easy back in the day. But instead of resizing it in the scene and then using the scale filter, we can just do that. We can just leave it. So I'm actually going to come over here and reset transform on this picture. I'm going to make it super tiny. And then I'm going to come up to filters. I'm going to add scaling aspect ratio, 4K, area, and that's going to scale it back up. But it's going to do it in 16 by 9. So for 4 by 3 4K, you want 2880 by 2160. I can put it into position, and then we can move on with applying our effects. So here, we go ahead, and we're going to basically kind of recreate what we were doing before. So we are going to put all of our effects above this 4K scale. So I'm going to rename it 4K end, so then I know it goes at the bottom. That's not what I wanted. We're going to add in retro effects and drag that up, and we're going to NTSC it. Now color bleed, we're going to keep pretty low. And you may not want NTSC specifically. This would be more if you're kind of emulating like an RF capture or a composite on a TV. You wouldn't necessarily want it strictly for like retro gaming emulation, but maybe you do. Like, that's okay if you do. I kind of like it the way it is. I don't necessarily want to tweak it too much. Come over here, we'll add another retro effects. And then we could do the CRT emulation. And we can mess with our phosphor layout. Crank up that bloom size. I feel like threshold is backwards. I think threshold getting, like, increasing the threshold should decrease the blooms, but that's neither here or there. That looks like it's super sharpened, and this makes it look more like a CRT. So we can even turn off the CRT if, I like it. I like it. This is making it look like we're playing on an old TV. And then we can start playing with the corner radius and the geometry to make it look like it's actually fit into this tube, which actually helps a lot since it was a awkwardly sized screenshot there. And we can play with black levels and white levels so that it all shows up. I really dig that. Maybe we add a color correction one after this. Bump up the contrast a bit, which I thought would make it darker, not brighter. Whoops. Hello? A little bit like that. Turn down the gamma with it. Curve crank up the saturation a little bit more. I'm liking that. And maybe we add the scan lines too. Obviously, we have the CRT emulation. We shouldn't need scan lines, but I think if we do it in between here, again, 90 degrees, not 45. Animate it. Well, we wouldn't want it to animate for compression's sake. Maybe we would. Change the floor so it's barely visible. The period increases them. Right there. Now we got the best of both worlds. And if we animate, ooh, it gives it that little glow. So now if we switch fully to the scene, obviously you don't see the game in motion. I think it's pretty sick, though. Like, it's not, you know, preserving the pure pixels, but like, what? And if you think the NTSC is a little too much, then we can turn off that filter and just use the RGB separation one. So we do retro effects. You're not seeing this. I'm not going to crank it up. But the chromatic aberration, if we really want to give it some bleed, usually red's just like, if we do like -1, -3, give it like up that way, and then usually blue is the one that's like really far behind. Yeah, like that. That's looking more like a VHS tape. Woo! Thank you, everybody. All right, let's see if Crash is up and running so we can raid him real quick. I will send you all whispers as soon as I end the stream.
So, we are going to get into creating